Welcome back to Sovereign Moves. Today, we're diving deep into the latest global strategies. Remember to like and subscribe for more insights.
Acknowledge the board. What you're witnessing right now is not some localized skirmish in the Middle East. It's not a temporary disruption in supply chains. No, this is the architecture of strategic attrition. Today, we're breaking down the raw source intelligence on the convergence of military blockades, electronic warfare, and macroeconomic shifts. Shifts that are fundamentally rewriting the global balance of power. In this explainer, we will methodically map out the data. Keep your focus absolute. 4.8 billion. Let that number sink in for a moment. Today, May 2nd, the cost of the U.S. naval blockade has hit exactly $4.8 billion for Tehran. This is the calculated, unforgiving price of a paralyzed economy enforced day by day, barrel by barrel, in the highly volatile waters of the Middle East. Section 1. The $4.8 billion noose. To really grasp the weight of that figure, we have to look at the immediate tactical reality on the water. The United States Central Command has clamped down a rigorous maritime interdiction zone right in the Gulf of Oman, hitting the southern approaches to the Strait of Hormuz. It's a deliberate strangulation of Iran's main economic artery. Just look at the Pentagon's exact metrics here. It paints a bleak picture. Tehran's shadow fleet is literally rotting in the Gulf. We're talking about 53 million barrels of crude oil, currently trapped on 31 impacted Iranian tankers. On top of that, 45 commercial vessels have been interdicted or diverted. Land-based storage facilities inside Iran, they've reached their absolute functional limits. It's forcing the regime to use aging, degrading tankers as floating storage. Mathematically, that holding capacity is going to be completely exhausted very soon. And the collateral damage of this paralysis, it extends way beyond just lost oil revenue. The complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz has engineered an unprecedented maritime and humanitarian crisis. Right now, 20,000 mariners and 2,000 ships are stranded in the Persian Gulf. They're just sitting there, surviving on emergency resupplies out of Saudi Arabia and Oman, anchored in a state of suspended animation, waiting for some kind of fracture in this geopolitical deadlock. It's a harsh reminder that, in the grand strategy of empires, human logistics are almost always the first casualty. Meanwhile, inside Iran, the domestic fallout is nothing short of catastrophic. This blockade is acting like a brutal, slow-tightening noose around the neck of their entire economy. We're seeing inflation surge past 50%. The Iranian rial is in absolute freefall against the US dollar. 191,000 citizens have lost their jobs across the industrial and energy sectors in just a matter of months. In response, the leadership in Tehran is demanding an economic jihad, framing this not as a temporary problem they can fix, but as an existential battle of endurance against Western pressure. Section 2. The St. Petersburg Pivot. But the physical waters are only one dimension of this conflict. To understand the true endgame, we have to zoom out from the Gulf and look at the diplomatic chessboard over in St. Petersburg, Russia. Listen very closely to the words of Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The United States has failed to achieve its war objectives and is now seeking negotiations from a weakened position. You can feel the authoritative weight in that statement. It signals a critical shift in leverage. Tehran is projecting extreme confidence. They're calculating that the global economic strain of a closed strait will break Western resolve long before Tehran ever submits. And critically, they have explicitly detached the reopening of the strait from any concessions regarding their nuclear program. The strait is now a pure bargaining chip. Through their Russian back channel, Tehran has methodically laid out what's being called the Hormuz Grand Bargain. It's a three-step process. Step 1, Washington must lift the U.S. naval blockade and end hostilities entirely. Step 2, Iran will then reopen the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping. And Step 3, only then, in a later final phase, will nuclear negotiations resume. Do you see the play? They are demanding the total lifting of the siege before they surrender even a fraction of their nuclear leverage. Now, this uncompromising posture, it's only possible because of Moscow. Vladimir Putin has cemented a strategic partnership with Tehran, effectively providing the diplomatic iron shield that allows Iran to negotiate without surrendering. Russia is utilizing its veto power at the UN Security Council, positioning itself as the indispensable diplomatic guarantor, shielding Tehran from international ultimatums. And here is the dry strategic irony of the whole situation. Moscow is actively benefiting from the very crisis it's offering to solve, reaping immense profits from the elevated global oil prices caused by this ongoing blockade. Section 3. The Electronic Dome. So you have to ask yourself, why hasn't the United States military simply bypassed this diplomatic shield and dismantled the blockade by force? Well, the answer is an invisible wall shielding Iranian airspace and territorial waters. At the absolute core of this electronic dome is the activation of the Murmansk-BN electronic warfare system. This Russian tech has effectively blinded U.S. drones and disrupted NATO communications across a staggering 5,000-kilometer radius. And it doesn't stop there. Layered within this disrupted airspace is the Russian Resonance NE radar, the Chinese YLC-8B designed specifically to track stealth aircraft, real-time targeting data from the Russian Kayam intelligence satellite, and precision guidance via the Chinese Beidou navigation network. Put it all together, and they've created a highly sophisticated grid that completely neutralizes Western technological supremacy. And this foundation? It wasn't built overnight. It was established just before hostilities escalated during the Maritime Security Belt 2026 joint exercises, right there in the Strait of Hormuz. That's when China, Russia, and Iran tested their coordination and established shared situational awareness. Today, Chinese naval assets in the region are actively tracking U.S. THAAD batteries and F-22 deployments, instantly feeding that intelligence straight back to Tehran. This joint intelligence sharing has essentially paralyzed American strike capabilities because it has completely removed the element of surprise. This convergence of power is what we call the Triple Axis. It represents a highly coordinated military, economic, and technological alignment between China, Russia, and Iran. The reality on the board is this: the United States is no longer fighting a single, isolated nation in the Middle East. It is engaging an integrated coalition, one designed specifically to counter, dilute, and ultimately exhaust Western maritime and air power through synchronized multi-domain resistance. Section 4. The Sovereign Ledger. Listen closely. To the sovereign minds analyzing this intelligence, the most critical battlefield here is not physical. It's not even electronic. The physical war in the straits, the kinetic strikes, the naval blockades, the traditional sanctions, it's all merely a distraction, a cover mechanism for the macroeconomic endgame. The real conflict is the financial war. We are witnessing a calculated, aggressive pivot toward de-dollarization and the deployment of a BRICS digital currency, which intelligence indicates will operate on a gold-backed blockchain system. The war isn't over. It has simply moved to the ledger. Just consider the exact financial maneuvers being executed in the shadows of this physical conflict right now. Russia and Iran have quietly signed a 3-year sanctions resistance pact, designed to deeply integrate their economies and bypass Western banking systems entirely. You have the Reserve Bank of India formally proposing a digital currency framework for the BRICS 2026 agenda. And crucially, China continues to purchase 80% of Iranian oil at a heavy discount, transacting entirely in yuan. Every single one of these mechanisms is systematically designed to bypass the US dollar, rendering traditional American financial sanctions completely obsolete. This brings us to the ultimate strategic forecast. The true existential threat to the West isn't a temporarily closed strait. It isn't 53 million barrels of stranded oil. It's not even disrupted NATO communications. The true threat is an obsolete currency. The 2026 conflict is acting as a massive catalyst, forcing revisionist states to construct a multipolar financial ecosystem that operates entirely beyond the reach of American maritime power and Western financial institutions. The moves are being made. Are you watching the right ones? Stay sovereign. Join us. We are only 953 people away from our next major milestone. Subscribe now to see the moves before the mainstream catches up.